Is Kansas coming alive just in time for a final push of the season, or was this just a random blowout win? We discussed Kansas dominates Kansas State 90-68.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Derek Johnson. Give me a follow on Twitter at DJohnsonRadio. You can find our show with Locked On Jayhawks anywhere you get your podcasts, including on our YouTube page. Thank you to subscribing. Thank you to the everydayers tuning into each and every episode. On today's episode of Locked On Jayhawks, we're discussing Kansas taking down Kansas State on Tuesday night in the Big 12. Their home finale, senior night for KU, and they crushed Kansas State 90-68. What do we take away from the game? Because Kansas came into this one on a 2-game losing streak. Are they fixed? Are they turning the corner at the right time? Or was this just a really good performance that we'll look back on as just kind of an aberration? We're going to discuss all that and more. Go to the game. Next up with the Houston game coming up on Saturday on this episode of the show. First, we're brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase with GameTime. Kansas wins 90-68. Blowout win for Kansas after kind of a mess start, and very easily was a game that could have been a little bit closer, but KU had a decent enough lead at halftime and then just kind of ballooned their lead from there. Jerome Tang in the postgame Kansas State head coach kind of put it best. He said, they kicked our butts, so this was just a butt kicking for Kansas. Again, you win by 22 points. This was one of KU's better performances of Big 12 play. I mean, obviously there's going to be wins that mean more in terms of who you beat when you look at the Baylor game and the Houston game and, you know, even games like TCU and Oklahoma. Like, those are better teams. But getting blowout wins and having everything click, that's not something we've seen in a ton of games for KU this season. It's been like the 2 Oklahoma State games and the home Texas game, and now kind of this game as well. And obviously the home Texas game didn't lead to a turning of the corner. They lost the next 2 games. So there's no guarantee that this blowout win is going to lead to something better, but it did feel like there were some tangible things. And maybe it's just the idea of this is your last stand, this is your last hope, show me something. And they did, but that does remain to be seen on Saturday with Houston. Kansas led for over 34 minutes of this game, and even despite Kansas State going 6 of 7 of their final 7 shots, Kansas won by 22, so that easily could have been a situation where Kansas ends up winning by, 25, 30 points, even more if that doesn't happen. Odd part about the game was both teams shot 45% from the floor. It wasn't a game where, Kansas shot 60% and Kansas State shot 40%. Wildcats actually made more 3-pointers, 2 more of them than Kansas did, though KU was solidly more efficient from 3 on unlimited attempts and volume. The blowout came on the tails of getting to the free throw line a ton. Kansas was aggressive getting to the free throw line. It came from making said free throws. That was a huge difference. Kansas took advantage 90% on free throws in this game. Kansas State only shot 48% on free throws. It came with Kansas having just 6 turnovers for the game. Kansas was +5 in the turnover department. They were +6 in points off of turnovers. It came from being +10 on the glass. They had an 8-2 edge in offensive rebounds, which led to a 9-0 advantage in second chance points. It came from being +4 in points in the paint, despite the fact that Kansas missed a bunch of layups for the second straight game against Kansas State. It came with 16 assists, a good number there. Came with 6 more steals, 9-3 for Kansas. Came with 2 more blocks, 6-4. Came with Kevin McCullar and Hunter Dickinson putting up big stat totals. It came with Dajuan being Dajuan. It came with KJ throwing down monster dunks after monster dunks. It came with signs of life from Nick Timberlake, and even, although it was a very limited amount of minutes played, Marco Jackson. And most of all, it came with a 21-5 advantage in fast break points. I really thought that was something, by the way, that KU seemed to emphasize in this game that I really liked, that they were trying to make sure in transition that not just as a whole they were going to work their way down the court, but that KJ Adams was going to be the guy that he had to sprint down the court quickly, and that they were going to try to get it so that he got down the court so fast with his athleticism that against a Kansas State team that basically plays a lot of 2 big lineups with, David and Gesson, kind of at the 4 a lot of times, with maybe like a Will McNair at the 5 or Colbert, even though he got hurt, at the 5, to where they're playing some too big basketball. So they're basically saying, hey, KJ, you're faster than their other big. Beat them down the court. And if you do that in transition, they're going to have to put a guard on you to, stop the pass from coming in at the rim. And Kansas made a concerted effort to get the ball down quickly in transition and say, okay, we've got the matchup. We worked it down quickly. KJ Adams is guarded by a guard. We're just going to kind of lob it up to him quickly in the post, and he's going to have the advantage. That happened a couple times in this game. I thought that was really impressive for KU. In the end, again, you win by 22, and that's always nice to see on senior day. They haven't lost a senior day game in like 40-something years at this point, 41 years at this point. Some years we get emotional senior day speeches, and I always say that senior day is when things get real. The season, the journey is so fun. Usually senior day is when things get real because you start to realize that, this season, this team, some of these players, this is it for them, right? Like you're counting possible single-digit games or games on, one hand of how many more games you're going to get to see them at KU. And in some years, it's a little different than others. Some years you don't really have a bunch of seniors. Some years you have seniors that meant so much to the program, right? You think of guys like Frank Mason and Devontae Graham and, going back, Kirk Heinrich and Nick Collison, right? I mean, pick your senior day or senior player or, a senior day speech. You think of like the Jamari Trailer one. We've had so many great ones and moments and memories and so many emotional ones too that, the Sfee one was great too. This time we didn't really get as much of that. It was more like basic senior day speeches. I did say it was kind of refreshing that, hey, if we're not going to get that, like, let's get something different. Hunter Dickinson went for more of the laughs, which was kind of a nice change of pace. And I thought that was a little bit more unique to this team, but still provided a little bit of something there. Obviously, though, this game was important for a lot of reasons. It snapped a 2-game losing streak for Kansas, and with the next game being at Houston, you lose this game tonight. All of a sudden, it's 3 straight. You're looking down the barrel of 4 straight into the Houston game. Obviously, beating rival, getting revenge, and coming back from an earlier loss that you had on the road in Manhattan. That's important. Keeping the senior day a streak alive, right? You're always trying to build on things as a program with what some of these great foundations have laid for you. And you did that in this game. Importance of seeding times 2. Importance of seeding in the Big 12 tournament. Importance of seeding in the NCAA tournament. Right now, Kansas kind of projected to be a 3 seed. But, if they finish the season strong, they can still work their way up to the 2 line. But you really want to avoid that 4 seed. The further the list you fall down, the less likely it is that you're going to be given one of those first or second round pods of preferential treatment for where you're going to be. And so if Kansas can get probably on the 3 line, I would assume they'll send them to Omaha, which will be helpful for the first and second round. You get into the 4 or 5 seed line. Remember last time Kansas was a 4 seed, they shipped them out to Salt Lake City. And I don't remember where the locations were that year. Maybe there weren't any obvious ones nearby. But that is something that tends to be important. So, also you don't want to have to play the 1 seed in the Sweet 16, right? If you're the 3 seed, 2 seed's still really good, and there can be a difference there, but you want to delay as long as possible the best team you would have to play. So there is, to me, a big difference. Maybe not as much between being the 2 and the 3 seed, but there kind of is between being the 3 and 4 seed. So winning these games is going to be important to try to fend that off. And then, if you can work your way into the top 4 in the Big 12 for a top 4 seed to get that double bye, that would be huge, especially with the team that's thin and isn't very deep to last 4 games in 4 days. If you make it that far, they're going to need some help this week or to win at Houston on Saturday, which is a very difficult chore, but you had to win this one to get to that point too. Above all, though, you're running out of time to find that requisite level of play that you need to go deep in an NCAA tournament. And things looked pretty impressive with maybe kickstarting some individual performances. Like think of what Nick Timberlake did in this game. If that is kickstarting something that's going to carry over and we get a, Nick Timberlake type run of, again, I don't want to go this far, but Remy Martin and Malik Newman, I don't think it'd be to that level, but a light version of that would be very imperative and would completely change how this team could finish the season. And so from that standpoint, from what you saw from Nick Timberlake tonight, that's why this performance is one of those where you can have bigger takeaways than just what the game itself was. But also I go back, they won their game against Texas in a blowout fashion. It did not carry over into the next 2 games about them, hitting their stride as much as I wondered if it would. You lost the next 2 games. to BYU and then Baylor. Now, maybe that's different because the BYU game you're without Kevin McCullar, and in the Baylor game it was his first game back, and you just lost to a good team on the road. So I think it'll be very interesting because all of a sudden, if you lose at Houston by 10 on Saturday, we're not going to look back on this one and be like, see, flip was switched. Now, maybe if you go to Houston and win, we are going to view it that way. What about if you go to Houston and lose by like 3 points, though? I think at that point, we might be like, yeah, maybe they are flipping a switch. And that would, even though, it's Kansas, there are no moral victories for this basketball program. That would be as close as you could kind of get to those one. So I think as much as the hope is this KU team is flipping the switch at the last moment, like the Kansas City Chiefs did. We heard that comparison from Hunter Dickinson this week, and that things will now click for Nick Timberlake and the team. The wake-up call is you do have to play Houston Saturday, which in all likelihood, you're going to see Bill Self be maybe as big of an underdog as he's ever been in a Big 12 game at Kansas. I don't know. But before you can have that opportunity and what's after that, this was the first part of finishing strong for Kansas, and you passed with flying colors in one of your better overall performances in Big 12 regular season play. Let's continue on to our GOATs of the game on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. First, we're brought to you by GameTime. Buying tickets to your favorite sporting event shouldn't be stressful. GameTime is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun that you're going to be having. Cool part about GameTime, they have those last-minute ticket prices, so it's perfect for the Big 12 tournament, which is next week, where maybe you go out to Power and Light and you're, having a cocktail here or there, or, drinking a soda water, and you're just like, I'm just here for the vibe. And then all of a sudden, like, yeah, you know what? I kind of want to go into the game. Yeah, I don't have tickets. Well, you just pull up the GameTime app and boom, you can buy your tickets, walk across the street. You're going into the Big 12 tournament. I'm seeing tickets for this thing as low as like $1, although those are different sessions than maybe KU will be in. But point being, you're going to be able to get in with GameTime. Snag the tickets without the stress. Download the app today with GameTime. Create an account and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. On to our GOATs of the game. If you're new to the segment, our good GOATs are the current adage of the word, greatest of all time. Our bad GOATs are the old adage of the word, more of the scapegoat. Let's start with KJ Adams on the good. 16 points, 5 of 10 shooting. He was 6 of 6 at the foul line, had 5 rebounds. So, again, I guess after a game where he had 0 rebounds forever, it was nice to see at least get a handful there. He had 1 assist, 2 steals, and he had a game high plus minus, was plus 35. No one else was even above plus 20 for Kansas. So by far, he had a big impact in this game. And I really liked that they got to play him a bit at the 5. I thought that Parker Brown, who was obviously celebrating senior night, the thought was he might not go in the game because he rolled his ankle in the Baylor game. We saw him in the last minute of the game. Now, I don't know if that was indicative that he was available to play in this game, and that, they just didn't want to, or if it was indicative that Parker Brown, they just played him in the last minute because the score was out of hand. And even though he was kind of hobbled, there was a minute to go and he wasn't going to really be asked to do much. So it was fine. It's not like his leg got chopped off and he can't walk or anything at all. So I don't know what that was, but I did like having the trimmed rotation where it was just Hunter's going to play 30 minutes at the center. KJ is going to play the backup 5, and that's going to be it. Because I do think Parker Brown has served a serviceable job in being what he's asked to do, is just don't mess up the game as backup center. But now that you're in the Big 12 tournament, NCAA tournament, end of regular season mode, go with your best guys. And I can't help but wonder if that extra 10 minutes of playing KJ at the 5 as opposed to, or 5 to 10 minutes, whatever it ends up being in the game, is the backup center minutes over Parker Brown for a team that has a smaller margin for error like this Kansas team does. Does it make more sense to try to gain a little bit by having KJ as the backup 5 and playing 4 guards around him, and then playing a little bit more of 4 guards around Hunter Dickinson to give KJ a little bit of break when, he's not in as the backup 5? I don't know. To me, it does kind of make a little bit of sense there. Kevin McCullar gets a good GOAT. 19 points, just 5 of 14 from the floor, but 2 of 4 from 3. He just missed a lot of layups. So those are ones you expect to fall. It was good to see the 3 ball go in at a nice volume there. 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, and 1 block. Did a little bit of everything, and good to see him. That's 39 total points in his 2 games since coming back. So clearly you feel like he's not just back, but he's like back to where he is, although the efficiency, I guess, hasn't totally returned. It was better in the Baylor game than this one. But again, this wasn't a situation where it was like, oh, he's missing jump shots because he doesn't have enough lift in his legs. He was just missing layups. Like, that feels like something that's not going to carry over game to game. Although weirdly, KU has had some layup issues over the back half of the Big 12 season. Hunter Dickinson gets a good goat here. 15 points. Again, just 5 of 16 from the floor for Hunter Dickinson. Makes it on here, though, with 20 rebounds, 2 assists. How about that 1 assist on the outlet pass to Dajuan Harris? For my money, he is the best outlet passing big man that Bill Self has had at KU. I mean, there have been some other good ones too, and I don't want to go through the whole list of everything, but he's really good at it. 5 blocks too. He has a couple games now this year with 5 blocks, also a steal. So he really impacted the game on the inside. But it is funny because Kevin McCullar and Hunter Dickinson, they both end up on here. They combined went 10 of 30. If I would have told you on Tuesday morning that Kevin McCullar and Hunter Dickinson would combine 10 of 30 against Kansas State, you would have thought that Kansas either got upset or that maybe they had to like grind one out in a low-scoring, ugly type of game to win it. But no, they win by 22. And I think that's credit to both those guys for, even though they weren't efficient missing shots at the rim, they still found a lot of ways to impact the game in a positive way. Dajuan Harris gets a good goat, 8 points. He was 3 of 8 from the floor, 7 assists to 2 turnovers. He had 2 steals. The most impressive thing Dajuan did, though, he basically was the Tyler Perry stopper. And this was something I brought up in the preview. You go back to the game in Manhattan, it was more KU just switching everything, right? So, like, there were times where Johnny Furphy was on Tyler Perry. There were times where Dajuan was on Tyler Perry. There were times where, whoever was on Tyler Perry. And there were still some times in this game where Kansas switched. And, yeah, it was Furphy, guarding Perry on a ball screen. Or it was, X player guarding him on a ball screen. It felt like a lot more in this game, though. Dajuan Harris just stuck with him. And again, that wasn't every possession. There were some switches and some other players guarding him. But for the most part, it was Dajuan not just sticking with him, but denying the ball from even getting in his hands to begin with. And Tyler Perry went 0 for 6. That was the guy who took over the game in the second half and overtime against you in Manhattan. Didn't do anything this game. And a big reason why was Dajuan Harris. Nick Timberlake gets a good go. 18 points on 6 of 7 shooting, 4 of 5 from 3 in 23 minutes of play. Is this the start of Nick Timberlake getting going in March? Boy, would that be big news for KU if that could happen. Also, walk-on moments get a good goat for KU here. There weren't a ton of them, but Patrick Cassidy got the layup off and got the goaltend call, so he gets on the scoreboard there. Michael Jankovich hits the free throw. He nearly had that charge. That would have been certainly one that got Allen Fieldhouse pretty loud if he would have been able to do that, or if he would have been able to hit a 3 at the beginning of the game. I will say this, that beginning of the game when, they were kind of like going at Jankovich and stuff, maybe that was a reminder that, and this is for me included, I definitely was part of the camp that, like, why not just give Jankovich like 5 minutes out there and eat away from Nick Timberlake? If Timberlake's not hitting threes, what's the worst thing that can happen between the defense of Timberlake, Jankovich? I think we found out maybe a little bit in this game, but cool to see that they had some good moments there. As far as the bad goats, the layups, Kansas was just 11 of 28 on layups. So think about that. If Kansas would have had a normal game from layups, or, a good game from layups, right? Like, think about if they would have went 20 of 28, then you're winning the game by like 40 points, which would have been pretty crazy for KU to do. So layups bad. And that's something that has come up a little bit more often than you would like here, especially for a team that doesn't take a lot of threes. You better make your layups. And I would say it feels like almost once every other game, kind of just on average, like, it's not really the case for KU right now. So I don't know if you're just ready to declare that they're bad at layups, or if this is just kind of a weird stretch over the last like 4 weeks of the season. Some other nitpicky ones that I don't know. I thought about putting on here. I thought not, whatever. I still wish KU would shoot more threes. In a game where he shot 46% from 3, can we get up more than 13? And that was only, 12 before Michael Jankovich shot like a 30-footer at the end of the game. Can we shoot a little bit more, right? Because I'm not saying this team needs to shoot 33s in a game. Their bread and butter is scoring inside. Okay, go with that. I get it. But especially in a game where you're missing layups and you are shooting well from 3, You up the volume a little bit there. That's just a nitpick one. And then not getting bench guys more minutes despite winning. Again, you could nitpick that. Jamar McDowell only plays 3 minutes. Marco Jackson only plays 6 minutes. And it's like, you won by so much. Why would you not give those guys more run? I guess the counter to that, which I could understand this, is we're so late in the season that if you would have got Jamar McDowell 7 minutes or 8 minutes, or you would have got Marco Jackson 10 minutes or 11 minutes instead of 6, would we really be like, okay, everything's solved, they're fixed, like they're trending in the right direction now, they're going to be superstars by the time we get to the end? No, that wouldn't have happened. So I guess that one is a little bit of a nitpick. But I will say, going back to the rotation talk, it looked more like a 6-man rotation in this game. Parker Brown only played 1 minute. Marco only played 6. McDowell only played 3. And I wonder if that's the plan come the postseason. And honestly, I wouldn't hate it. Just do a 6-man rotation. You got your starting 5. You got Timberlake as the 6th. And then the other bench guys are more of like, in case of emergency. And Marco's only going to play 5 to 10 minutes just to be one extra body that you can throw out there to give at least a little bit of a spell to somebody else. I don't hate it at all. All right, let's get on to what's next for KU basketball in this episode of Locked on Jayhawks. First, we are brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, or maybe all three, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your parts guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Bet you a lot of college coaches wishes that they had the eBay Guaranteed Fit for the transfer portal, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Finishing up on this episode of Locked on Jayhawks, what is next for KU men's basketball? Well, it's time for the regular season finale, which will come on Saturday. They'll be on the road against Houston, and on KenPom, the Cougars are favored by 10 points. Now, one thing that like KenPom, for instance, doesn't take into account is injuries through regular season, right? It's just kind of blind to say that, well, you were without this guy in this game, so we're going to dock you for that. So realistically, I don't think the spread will be that much, and I don't think the books would feel comfortable saying we're going to make Kansas with Bill Self a 10-point dog in any game, right? Like that just wouldn't happen. But realistically, I mean, they were, I think at one point, like a 6.5-point dog against Baylor. I think it might have closed at 4.5 or 5.5, though, after it sounded like Kevin McCullar could be or would be playing in the game. So realistically, I could see the spread of this game being like 7 points, 8 points, maybe 8.5, 6.5, somewhere in that range, which is still pretty crazy considering just it's Kansas basketball and everything like that. But this is a real opportunity to show what you got, right? You win this game, it's going to feel like you've turned a corner. It's going to feel like you are flipping that switch at the right time of the season. You lose, but you lose close. I still feel like you can feel like you're having a nice run of play going to the Big 12 tournament. The one thing you need to avoid here, just don't get blown out where it feels like you just took the step back of what you just had with this game against Kansas State. But this is a real opportunity for Kansas where if you win at Houston, you'll work yourself into probably at worst, you'll be a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament at that point. Like there's a lot on the line in this game, a lot more than you would expect, even though Kansas won't have a chance to win the Big 12. That'll do it for this episode of Locked on Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcasts, including on our YouTube page. We'll have a KU Houston preview later in the week. Also going to be joined by Nick Schwert on Thursday's show, as we're going to talk more big takeaways from the K-State game and a little bit about possible returners for the 2024 season. So make sure you subscribe to the show anywhere you get your podcasts or on our YouTube page. See you next time on Locked on Jayhawks.